small churches now they're having to look at closing their doors because not very many people go anymore. But you know the problem we have around here? Trying to keep up. Amen. It's hard to keep up in this place. I don't know how many calls I got this week, but a lot. We had 260 people here last week, okay? And I didn't preach. What's that tell you? They're not coming for me. Amen? Now, they love me, and I love them, and I understand all that stuff. But what's telling you is people are hungry to learn about Jesus Christ. Amen? So what we need to do, when I got all those calls this week, they're like, Pastor, what are we doing? What kind of harvest party are we having and all that kind of stuff? We didn't have nothing, as y'all can tell. We said, you can go to Baptist Temple. Next year, we're going to put on the calendar and try to do some kind of harvest party. I don't know exactly what it'll look like. I know that Miss Tara is going to be having tractors and hay wagons, and her dad will love me after all that. But we're going to have something going on, bonfire and all that stuff. So you guys pray with us, because here pretty quick we're going to be going through and seeing what we're going to do this year. And it always makes me a little nervous when we project that far ahead, because it takes money to do all that stuff. And that's that M word I shouldn't have let slip. But it does. It takes money. You guys are doing a great job. Continue your giving, and we'll continue loving people and passing out love all over. But this morning, can you guess what we're going to talk about? Marriage. Marriage. I told them back there when we prayed, I said, can you pray for me? And they said, okay, we will. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to talk about sex. They're like, who? What'd you just say? Not in the church. Well, if y'all didn't realize when you turned in the door, the parking lot up there, this is Crosspointe Biker Church, and we may talk about something that makes you uneasy. So if you haven't had that talk with your teenager and they're sitting in the room, I can promise you on the way home, you're probably going to have that talk. I'm not going to be talking about anything that y'all don't already hear, and I'm not going real deep, but I want to talk about some things this morning that guys and wives, they go through. How many of you, I mean, if we're afraid to tell you what God's word says about being married to your mate, there's a problem. Y'all are all looking at me like, I can't wait till he starts talking. Y'all pray for me. I'm sweating up here just a little bit. I can talk about bikes all day long, but when you start talking about these things where they're kind of taboo in the church, it makes you a little nervous. If you don't think so, get up here and I'll give you my notes and you can talk about anything you want to. I'm just kidding. I have a hard time. Last week I tried really hard to listen to Bubba. He did a great job and I was excited about what he done. But do you realize, yeah, he needs a hand clap of applause. He did a good job. Standing up in front of you guys, it's great, but some of you frown. And when you grab your Bible and start thumbing through it real fast, we think we done something wrong up here, okay? I just have a hard time, after I fall on these stairs, I have a hard time sometimes sitting down and listening to other people, not because they're good, but this is like a baby. And I just can't wait to talk, and I was wanting to interject you last Sunday, and anyways. We're going to talk about married today. And we're probably going to talk about it next week too, okay? So y'all aren't going to get away from me that quick. I believe that, I wished when I was in church back years ago, I wished that the pastors talked about marriage too. You know why? Because I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn the hard way. I didn't know how to treat my wife. I didn't know all the stuff that goes along. All I knew is that to be a Christian and to love Jesus, you couldn't even think about the S word because you're married, for Pete's sake. You shut that door and nothing. Today's society, they talk about it anytime they want to. And I'm like, if they can play that on TV when my kids are awake, and they can give you flashes on your computer, I think we need to talk about that just a little bit. So don't walk out till after I get done, and then you can be mad. I'm sure I'll get a lot of text from a few people that maybe didn't agree with what I'm going to say, but How many of you today have sowed a garden? And you have to forgive my Oklahoma accent. How many of you have put tomatoes or potatoes or whatever out and it's, I mean, I love it when y'all do. Because a lot of people, they'll bring us stuff, say, does pastors like this? And I'm like, absolutely. Me and a salt shaker, and I can eat just about anything. Black-eyed peas, oh my. I'm already thinking about chicken this afternoon. Sorry. Y'all can go to Oldenburg with us. We're going to eat chicken and have a good time. But how many of you just, when you sow a garden, you go buy the little package of seed that's ungodly expensive, and you get your water out, and there's a big process to all this. And it's, how many of you get frustrated because the next morning you come out and you expect to see full-grown tomatoes ready to go? I mean, it's kind of like planting corn. Farmers don't plant corn and then all of a sudden get up the next day and say, oh, it's time for harvest, and I didn't even have to put no money out in the ground and didn't have to insure it. And I mean, it'd be so much easier. But how many of you know today's society is, if you're going to, some people don't plant a garden because they're like, hey, I can walk in and grab it in the grocery store and pay 99 cents a pound for it. I don't even have to go through the watering and do all the weed in the garden. We want it right now, don't we? That's why McDonald's makes so much money. It's because we want it right now. We don't want to wait. We don't want to work for it. We want it right now. How many of you know if it takes time to plant a garden and it takes time for that stuff to come up, that you have to put out more sometimes than you're going to get? If you're going to have a marriage, fellas, you got to put time in it. It's not one of them things that you go down to the courthouse, you grab the biker preacher, and you show up and I did a wedding around a table the other day. That was a first. I didn't know what to do. You do, I do, we do, let's go. I mean, it was kind of odd. I've never done a marriage around, it was back there on one of them tables. I kind of felt guilty when I walked out. Lord, you was here, I know, but I never had a 5-minute wedding. Have now. Must be how they do it in Las Vegas, huh? Probably. Going and Elvis goes, boom. I do. I'm not going to sing, so y'all just calm down. But I want you to write down something this morning that we're going to talk about through this whole thing, and it is that marriage is not about what you say, it's about what you sow. How many of you know that? That was a good, I got that, and I'm like, why didn't a pastor years ago tell me that you had to work at being married? I mean, when I got married, we got married, and the next day I'm thinking she's got to do everything I tell her to, and life is great. Welcome to the world of marriage. It don't work that way. It's all about what you sow. Did you know that marriage is tough? Marriage is tough. You know why? Because you put anybody in the same room that is married, and you're going to get two different ideas. Yesterday, Hunter showed for the first time. We had a great time, and I throwed a shout out to Mike and Cheryl. And I mean, when I was walking around over, I showed my last heifer back in 1986 or 7, 5 maybe. I start walking around, okay? And I'm thinking, hey, this ain't too bad. I mean, I'm watching what Mike and Cheryl do, and they make it look easy. Their boy runs out with this big tote full of spray black and spray this stuff to shear them and spray glue. And, I mean, I'm going, really? What happened to when you just washed them, you stuck them in a fan and turned it on and it blow-dried them and you're ready to show? I mean, right out of the gate. They spent 3 hours on the heifer that Hunter showed, and I'm like, Tracy, we could buy the cow, but I'm thinking that I had 10 things going on yesterday, and I mean, we need to, if we're going to do this, that cow needs to step in line, and she had a good time. But it's like tractor pulling. There's a lot of money in showing animals. I would have lost everything back when I was doing it. I mean, these people, they got it going on. And Miss Tara's running out around in the ring showing them where to stand. And when they stuck us out in the ring, they handed you a big stob. I don't even know what you call that thing. It said poke their feet, rub their belly, hit them on top when they don't get their back in the right spot, and you're good. Nowadays, it's like you're going to do exactly what I said, but it's a lot of work. That's why there's not a lot of people that do it. Because how many know that not very many people want to put much into life? That's just a general rule. Not very many people want to do something that takes time. Marriage is tough. And I'm married to the only perfect woman God ever created. I am. She's not even here, so you can't blame it on me. I'm just telling you the way it is. She's perfect for me. But you know she's got flaws? Yeah. Thanks, Daryl. See, I told you that man right there. He'll tell me exactly the cow ate the cabbage. I mean, hey. But in today's world, we all want a marriage app. You know, one of them apps that you go on vacation, you start, well, I'm here and this many gallons, and that marriage app, or that app for travel, you just push the buttons and it goes, at the end of the thing, it says you use this many gallons, you got this many, you know. When people have a problem, they want a marriage app. I mean, they're looking for something that says, okay, here is why a lady thinks the way she does. I don't know why they do. I wish I could tell you why guys think the way they do. I can't. You're going to find out what we are on down in. Everybody wants a marriage app because we got smartphones. We ought to have smart marriages. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to do anything different than what we do to have a perfect marriage. And I can tell you that marriage isn't perfect. It gets ugly sometimes. You're going to disagree. When your wife is a little lippy, you want to be able to go, if you got an Apple phone. You want to hit that app and go, and it fix them. You're going to get hit for that one. Yeah. We want it to be right. If your wife gets lippy, you want to go, because it's easier to do that. If you say shut up, you done lost the war. How about if your husband's being a jerk face, you'd like an app that goes, I learned that off of some sweet lady in this church. That's what happens when her husband gets out of line. She calls him a jerk face. I'm like, that right there is funny stuff. She's going to quit talking to me, and I ain't even said who it is, Candace. But I'm going to pay for that one. Now I'm in trouble. But how many of you, if I had a fix your marriage prayer, that every one of you would come sit down and say, okay, I need that prayer to fix my marriage? Some here would want that. Others wouldn't. Some of you are thinking right now while I'm talking, I'm going to talk to him after service because I know there's some kind of something in a book that he has in his office, and it will fix my marriage, and all I got to do is say a few different words. There's not. There's not. That's why, you know where the most divorces happen? In the church. Isn't that sad? That makes us fail. Maybe you're here right now and you're having an issue in your marriage, or maybe it's a dating relationship and you want it fixed. And you're waiting on me to say something that is just an aha moment, and you're going to go home if your husband's not here, or maybe you're going to go home and go to eat over lunch and go, you know what? Pastor told me to do this, And if you do that, it's going to explode, and then you're going to go, the preacher is lying. I'm not lying. Marriage is a progression. You know how wine is? It gets better with age, I'm told. Stuff's nasty. If you drink it, you'll probably die. But it's supposed to get better with age. Tracy and I thought we loved each other when we got married, but now that we've been married 15 years, it still feels like 2. Do you know that I have to do a lot of stuff for us to have that marriage? She has to do a lot of stuff. How many women want to be married to the preacher when sometimes when you've toiled over this nice dinner and somebody calls on the phone and I have to look at her and say, sweetheart, I'm sorry, but I got to go. And there's days that she'll text me at 10:30 at night and say, are you okay? She puts up with a lot. Now, some of you's going, that ain't me. That's why there's only one of me here. Because not all of you could handle being set by yourself sometimes. It's not about what I say. It's about what you sow. If you don't get anything out of anything I say, I want you to remember that today. It's not about what you say. It's about what you sow. And we're going to talk about what we're sowing. It's not about what's in my mouth. It's about what is in my heart, and that's what matters. Now, in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 9, it says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. Now, I know there's a diverse bunch of people in here, and I know you've probably been to the hellfire and brimstone and the pastor that goes, huh, at every time he says something, and you have been beat over the head with Galatians 6, verse 7, that says, King James Version, I don't have it in front of me, but it's pretty pointed, and you've been hammered and hammered and hammered, and now you're going, do you mean there's a positive side to this verse here? Absolutely. Don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. We look at most passages as, well, some of them, as punishment. And I want you today to see that there is a promise in it. Okay, it's hard to live by God's word. I'll be the one to tell you right now. There's some of you here today that are struggling because you're fighting with what you want to live, but you want to see, you got so-and-so that's in this church, and it looks like they got a great marriage, and they're here all the time at the church, and why can't our life be that? It's because of what you put before your relationship with Jesus that harms you. There's some of you right now that have things in your life that you would love to be different, but you're not willing to put the effort out to stop whatever that is. Whatever that is. But God is right here wanting us to change our ways. In verse 8 it says, those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. Verse 9 says, so let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Now, how many of you know when you got married, it was for better or worse, for richer or poorer? Today's society says I can get divorced for a couple $100. I can get married for 35 or 40. If it doesn't work out, God doesn't want me to live unhappy. Anybody ever thought that? Well, the Lord doesn't want me to live unhappy. I mean, I'm a Christian and I live His Word, but just it ain't working out. I want you guys to listen real close. It means that God's timing is not yours. His is the right timing. And we may reap what we sow, but a harvest is that if you don't give up. There's a promise from Scriptures that is not what we say, it's what we sow in our relationship. They're talking about a harvest because harvest is something that takes time. Harvest is something you have to put out effort on. Harvest is something that you have to work the ground. How many of you got married and stopped working at dating your wife when you got married? It's okay because you guys ain't being honest with me, so I'm going to just tell you, there's people in this room that got married and you stopped what you were doing the day you got married. And if your wife asked if you still love her, you said, if something changes, I will let you know. That's not how you treat your wife. So today, you may have a bad marriage. You may have a bad relationship. And I'm saying that God can do more than we could ask for in our marriage. I want you to hang on. Many times in our life, guys, I'm going to talk to you for just a second. You ever thought that it was going to be one of those nights, and it turned out to be one of those nights? Or it turned out to be one of those nights. Now, it'd be nice. Now, I'm just talking to the guys here. You ladies, just hang on. We got a one-track mind, and if you get me off kilter, I may say something you don't like. We got a one-track mind. And it would be nice if our wives had a mood ring that said red, yellow, green. Yellow meant, red meant no, and green, you got my drift. We all in the same, you understand me now, huh? How many of you have went home and bought roses and your wife come home and, it's going to be one of those nights. And it turned out you slept on the couch because you asked for something that it wasn't happening. I'm just talking to the guys right now. Ladies, I'll deal with you in a minute. But that's the way us guys think. That's why I told you if you have a teenager in here and you haven't had that talk with them, as soon as you walk out the door today on your ride home, you're going to have that talk because they're going to be asking questions. And I ain't even said nothing wrong yet. It's all in y'all's mind. Married. Marriage has to deal with disappointment. Guys, it's going to be that way forever. They didn't come up with one of those mood rings. There's not a light bar on the back of her head, okay? You can't tell what's going on. You're going to make a mistake, just like I do. Some of you are like, I can't believe he just said that. If you just leaned over to your spouse and said, I'm sure glad we have a good marriage, you must have just got married, okay? I'm just going to tell you. You either just got together or you just got married or you just got divorced. Something's happening because you've done tuned me out. Marriage is full of one word that we never can get over, and that's called disappointment. Some of you are like, I know I just lied. We've got problems, and I'm trying to fix it. Marriage is full of disappointment because there's two people. Guys, we talked about one of those nights, and that's good conversation. But we're wired with tunnel vision. We'll buy flowers, we'll mow the yard, but we think our marriage and our love that we show our wives is just one way. I've been there. As long as she's smiling, you think you got a good marriage. When deep down inside of her heart and her head, she doesn't need affection. She needs love. Guys have tuned me out. Somebody's going, I can't believe you're talking about this. I'm just trying to help you with God's word. I want everybody's marriage to be a 10 when we get done talking about this in a couple weeks. I want it to be exciting. I want you to know that you have to put in what you want to get out of it. Ladies, us guys are jerks. Jerk faces, as somebody call it. We're jerks. We don't know how to treat our wives. We think we do. But how many of you have been a jerk this week at some point in your marriage? Come home tired. I'm going to pray for you, Mark. You can't see you've been that way? Something's wrong. You work too much. We're born that way. Guys were born to be jerks, okay? When God made us, he knew that he was going to make some jerks. But the good thing is after he made us, he gave us this little book called the Bible that we can read, and it will tell us how to be a perfect mate to our wives. And it's frustrating that we have to navigate through that. It's frustrating, ladies, that you have to sit there and look at your husband after he's hollered at you or done something or blamed you for something, thinking, okay, Lord, I didn't get married to be treated like this. And there's some of you here today that didn't get married to be treated like that. The one thing I had to change in my marriage with my wife is I had to get rid of one word. Just one. And that was the word divorce. Tracy and I cannot have a knockdown, drag out. We can get upset, and I don't hit her. She don't hit me. But we can, have a good one, and never do I have to worry that word is going to come out of her mouth. She's not going to say, Chris, I don't want to be with you no more. I'm done. I'm not. Do you know it's okay to fight? But you got to fight fair. You can't say get out. You can't call her a word that you'd have to put in the cuss bucket. Okay? Ladies, they don't work that way. And ladies, you can't call your husband that. It's tough. Because you know what guys are? We're passive and we're lazy. I don't know about y'all's house, but when I get home at night, no matter if it's 5 o'clock or 10 o'clock, when I come in, I just sit down and I grab a flavored water and I go sit in my big chair or a cup of coffee, and I'm like, shoo. And my wife doesn't stop till about 9 o'clock, and she worked all day too. You don't know what I just had to deal with today. I had 2 people thought they was going to kill each other, and I'm just drained. Guys, you go in the same way. You plop down your big chair. My wife, I don't even ask, because if I did, she'd say, God give you 2 feet. But when I sit down and supper's ready, if I don't get up, she brings it to me. Not because I sat in there and went, hey, woman, give me some food. If I ever do that, y'all will be the first to know, because you'll be coming to a showing at Miller Monster Robbins. If you're going to have a good marriage, you got to at least make them think it was their idea to bring your food to you. And don't ask me how to do it, because I didn't have nothing to do with how she acts. But she loves me. Even in spite of the long hair that I cut off or the way I dress 24/7, she loves me for me. That disappointment. I got one news flash for you. If you're dating somebody and there's a lot of disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, please do yourself a favor and break up with them and leave. You can still come to the church. We'll set you on one side. We'll set them on the other. It's happened in the last 6 years. Crosspointe just ends up that way. Sometimes, we have people in this room that was married to somebody else, but they're still coming to the church, and they got remarried, and they're having a great life. And I'm not condoning divorce, but if your dad has already paid for the whole wedding, it is cheaper to say I made a mistake than it is to go through with the marriage. You can ask my wife if you want to ask her. Because you know how bad it is to be disappointed. It's okay to say it ain't working out. You won't have to go through that weight loss program that us that have been divorced goes through. It's a great weight loss program. But God's not going to send you the perfect mate when you're married to somebody. I had somebody tell me that God sent her husband. I was like, no, he didn't. She's like, I can't believe you just said that. God's not going to send you your helpmate when you're married to somebody else. Goes both ways. You're not going to wake up one of these days and go, well, I don't want to be married anymore because, hey, can we go out on a date? I mean, God doesn't work that way. And there may be somebody in this room that's how it happened. Thank goodness for forgiveness and grace when we're too stupid to understand what the Bible says. If you get married and you are disappointed right now dating, red letter right here. Marriage will not fix your problem. A baby will not fix your marriage. A new house will not fix your marriage, because a new house, if you don't have a good marriage when you start building it, you'll be divorced when you get over it. I've done that. Tracy and I was married 3 years, and we got this bright idea that we'd build a brand new house across from Duke Energy. It was awesome. She said, I want these color walls. I'm like, okay, I don't care. I want this kind of shingle. My dad goes, son, you're not picking out your own shingles? No, we just roofed the house we live in, and I didn't pick them out. That's odd. No, it ain't. She don't tell me what color Harley to drive, and I don't tell her what kind of shingles she wants. She wants to change the color of the house. I'm going to go buy the paint. It's not worth an argument. You want me to tell you when we built this church that we didn't have one person squabble over some of this way we decored this? You know why? Because it ain't about the building. It's about Jesus. I'm just glad we got heat. But your marriage can work the same way. Marriage is a magnifier. How many believe that? You get married and there's a problem now. When you get married, that problem's going to explode. My coffee stains in the mornings by the coffee pot that Tracy just absolutely almost pulls her hair out with. When we got married, it got 10 times worse. Not all. I'm glad somebody's listening. I have a hard time pouring coffee without it getting everywhere. She comes in, there's a stain. Babe, I just get here. I have no idea, babe. I made that cup of coffee, and I thought I hung it over the sink when I poured it. Obviously, I didn't. The other morning, she come in and started cleaning up the kitchen at 7:15, and I'd been asleep 3 hours, maybe 4. So when she gets home, or when I see her before the day's over, she's like, did you hear me this morning? And I went, yeah, I knew you and Hunter was getting ready for school and teaching. You mean you didn't hear me making all that racket cleaning up the whole mess you left before I got up this morning? No, not really. And it was on. Hey, against gentle, there's no defense. But when you go to your wife gentle, you better be defense. Because when they come to that point, they want an argument. Don't smile. Don't agree. You're better off if you disagree with everything they say, but to agree when she wants you to disagree. I'm sorry, babe, I was sick when I ate, and I ate cereal. And if you guys have stomach problems with Crohn's on top of it, if you eat cereal, son, you have just bought the farm. Like, babe, I was doubled over begging God, I won't eat cereal again. That didn't help. Disappointment. Why don't you write this down? Disappointment is the gap between what I expect and what I experience. Did you know if you got married and you would quit looking at their disappointment areas in their life, did you know you'd have a good marriage? Because some of you's been married 25, 35, we even got some higher than that, and how many know that for the first 20 years, there was a lot of things that were a lot of stuff, and you had some bad times, and now you're like, I don't even know why we even argued over that. But I want to tell you something. When you get married and you focus on disappointment and you sow disappointment, like, I should have known it wasn't going to get no better after we got married. What are you doing? You're speaking condemnation on your marriage. You're focused on when your husband or wife is going to make a mistake. If you focus on disappointment and the things they do wrong, how many of you know it don't take very many years and you're ready to kick them to the curb because you've went from dating to disappointment and that's all you got on your mind and that's all you focus on, and before long you're going to be down at the courthouse signing papers and she's going to take half of what you got and you're going to give her the other half because, guys, you ain't going to get out of this cheap. It's easier to work your marriage out than it is to get rid of them. And if you'll use a little bit of the Bible along the way in your marriage, it works pretty good. You're not going to agree with everything. You're not going to like everything they do, guys or ladies. But if you focus on disappointment every day, how many of you know that is bad stuff? How many of you know if you come in this place every Sunday and had something negative to say about something that was going on, it ain't going to be very long till I'm getting a text saying, Pastor, we're not getting fed there like we used to, and we're going to have to move on. And I know exactly what's happened when that happens. You want me to clue you in? You quit putting in as much as you did when you first come. Everybody remember when you first come to the Biker Church? It was awesome. I mean, everything that happened, you was excited, and maybe now the music's just a little bit loud, or maybe they don't sing the right thing, or maybe the pastor doesn't preach the right thing, or maybe something happened this week that you didn't know about, and you're like, well, I don't know why they didn't ask me. When you get focused on disappointment, that's all you're going to see. It's kind of like buying your new car. You don't see anybody with that kind of car till you buy it, and then there's 500 of them in town. If you focus on you're going to get tired of me saying this, because if you focus on disappointment, that's what you're going to get. I want to turn to Luke chapter 1, verse 5, and we're going to talk just real quick about Zechariah and Elizabeth. When Herod was king of Judea, there was a Jewish priest named Zechariah. He was a member of the priestly order of Abijah, whatever that is. And his wife Elizabeth was also from the priestly line of Aaron. That's saying that Elizabeth and Zechariah was from a good family. Do you know there's people come from good families that get divorced? Good families get divorced. Disappointment. I want you to hang on to that word. It says in verse 6 that Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes, careful to obey all of the Lord's commandments and regulations. What does that spell? A great marriage. Careful to obey. Can that be said about you? I wouldn't even be in that sentence. I try very hard to do what God's word says, but I fail miserably every day. Zechariah and Elizabeth were godly people. They had no children because Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and they were both very old. I wonder how old that was. Anyway. Back in the day, marriages were arranged. I thought it was crazy. I mean, who wants to have an arranged marriage? Anybody? I mean, you just want to, okay, Mom and Dad, which one are you going to lean me towards? But since Hunter come along, I want to go back to the arranged marriage because I just do. Yeah. I was at that fairgrounds yesterday watching each one of them boys. They come over and start talking to her. I'm like, excuse me. I want you to make sure that you know that I'm Dad and here's what's on my side and we're good, right? Just so you know. I mean, I love Jesus and I love you and I'm willing to preach Jesus and teach you Jesus, but we'll come to Jesus if you mess with my daughter. You know what I mean? So So, I mean, Shrek's with me. He's got two beautiful little girls. When they get Hunter's age, I'm telling you, you got a hard row because they're like, Tracy's like, are you going to be a part of that showing thing? I'm like, there ain't nothing going around without Dad being there. I didn't touch nothing yesterday. I talked and I watched everything she done. I watched them boys, all of them, every one of them. Hey, don't look at her that way. She's over there working. Don't be gandering over this way because I'm telling you we're going to come to Jesus, right? I mean, real quick. There's a couple of them that think she's cute, and I'm like, well, you might as well wait till she's 2 years in college because you're not getting in a car with her, and she for sure ain't going anywhere in your big truck that blows black smoke and whatever it does. I mean, it just ain't happening. I mean, you guys, in a couple of years, we need Donnie, we need a bunch of you guys to get together and put $100 a piece in, and we'll put it in a safe so that when something happens to her or a guy treats her wrong, y'all can come bail the preacher out because it's coming. You know what I'm saying? I mean, some of you been there. Some of you are there now. I'm overprotective, and I think that marriage thing that if we could arrange it would be great, but back then, when people come together, it was to produce children. It wasn't so you had a riding partner. It wasn't so you could wake up in the morning and have a cup of coffee when you get retired and just enjoy each other's company. That's not what it's for. It was so you could get the family's name to keep on going. And it was real good if you had a little boy, because a little boy, it made them people walk around with their chests hung out going, yeah, it's my son. That's how it was. So that in mind, if you couldn't have one, it was thought that something was wrong with you. It was shameful, sinful. The one thing that they wanted and they couldn't have was a child. They could not have a child. Do you think they was disappointed with God? There's disappointment wrote all over those verses. Because there's people here that know exactly what it feels like to not be able to have children. And it's hard. It's hard to function. Let's fast forward to right now. My brother and his wife struggled with infertility for 4 years. And I can stand here and tell you it's real. And when your brother calls crying or you see your brother shedding a tear, because my family, I come from country folk, and guys didn't cry. Guys for sure didn't stand up here in front of a bunch of people and let a tear run down his eye, because that's not country and Western. I got told that's the same thing. Country and Western, it's not country and Western, it's country or Western. I didn't know that. But there's a lot of people that look to heaven and ask God why. There's a lot of you today that things has happened in your marriage or in your life that you've looked up and said, I need to know why God allowed this to happen. There's a lot of things that's happened in your marriage that rip them apart. Not being able to have a child, losing a child, that rips families apart. Because what happens is just like Elizabeth, I know she was looking up going, Lord, this is not what I prayed for. But there's people in this room or in your family that don't do church because they are distraught because something's happened in their life and God hasn't fixed it. And we read about Elizabeth. They kept on serving. And they were disappointment. My brother and his wife spent tens of thousands, I could tell you a figure and you'd probably choke on it, to have a baby. And when they finally laid it in God's hands and quit going down that road, I got 3 nieces that are beautiful. And it's because my brother and my family, if money can fix it, it's not a problem. But when you find out money can't fix the problem, that's when you start questioning, why does God allow this to happen to me in my life? And it tears marriages apart. You reckon that Zechariah may have been disappointed in Elizabeth just a little? You can't give me a son. You can't give me a child. Lord, why did I get married to this person? There's people in this room that won't acknowledge, but you get up in the morning saying, why did I marry this person? When we were dating, it was great. When Tracy and I was dating, it was awesome. When we bought a new house, it was awesome. But when people started telling her, your husband has a drinking problem, at first she defended it. And then it started sinking in. When she walked out to the trash day and there's 8 or 10 case boxes put together right beside the thing, she starts going, that was just a week. Something's wrong. She could have been disappointed, and I'm sure I disappoint her a lot. I disappoint God. I disappoint you guys. If you don't think so, I can show you my text. I disappoint you guys sometimes. But if you focus on all the negative, disappointing news, that's what you're going to reap. Maybe he thought he married the wrong person. Maybe he focused on that disappointment. Elizabeth could have been disappointed in Zechariah. I don't think they had EKGs and all that stuff that you can go do now to see which one was the problem. They blamed it on the lady back then. But Elizabeth could have been disappointed to Zechariah. Maybe she's thinking, can't give me a child, and she got focused on the disappointment. It would have ripped them apart. They could have started the blame game. You ever been in a duel between your spouse and, hey, you've done this, this, and this, and it's your fault. No, it ain't, because you've done this, and it's yours. I mean, it ain't going to go nowhere. And before you know it, y'all are so mad at each other that you're just ready to move on. Blaming the other person for whatever's went on in your relationship is not going to work. If the devil could have got them two off on their focus, they wouldn't have lasted. There wouldn't be something in the Bible where we could talk about two people that were godly driven, had God in their sights, and knew that they were on earth to live a godly life, and they were to serve God, and no matter what happened, they were going to continue serving. Maybe or not. Because this story could have went crazy. We could have read about both of them. And we could be reading, Zechariah got rid of Elizabeth because she couldn't give him a child, so then he got married to so-and-so, and they lived happily ever after. Each one of us sitting here today that's ever been divorced, and I don't know who all has, but I can tell you one thing. If you had to do it over again, chances are you could have saved it. Chances are. Because it ain't about you. Uh-oh. Got some looks out of that. It's not about you. It's not about what the other person's doing wrong. It's about how your relationship with Jesus is. Because you can focus on negative. You can walk in these doors today and say, well, I don't like the pastor's got the wrong shirt on, and it says something about Bourbon Street, and the pastor's daughter didn't talk to me. I mean, you can walk in that door and find 500 things today that were wrong. But if you walk in these doors to this church and you see Jesus when you walk in the door, you ain't even worried about what goes on up here. It's the same way in your marriage. I could pick Hunter apart. I could pick Tracy apart. I could pick our marriage apart. She could pick apart me. If one of you guys put $11,000 in your truck, it gives your wife they can get mad at you. Mine hadn't got mad. She might have questioned my thoughts on that truck. She ain't got mad. Because I do stuff wrong. It all boils down to I didn't pray for a truck when I should have. I didn't ask the Lord anything about what I was doing. And it's costing. It's easy to get disappointed. If you sow disappointment, that's what you're going to reap. So stop dragging the past up. How many of you got remarried? Maybe you've been married twice. Maybe you married more than you want to acknowledge. And y'all keep dragging the past up. You're like, I don't want to look at him because I know he'll call me out. We're humans. We drag the past up, don't we? If your wife or your husband does something like their last relationship, y'all have probably heard, well, I knew this marriage was going to work out. I knew you'd end up acting like her or him. Let me know how that worked out. You may not see her or him for a couple days. Did you know I had to change the way I looked at being married when Tracy and I got married? And I was a drunk. I had to change the way I looked at it. I had to put her on the pedestal. Not because she does nothing wrong, but because I'm not getting married again. As God is my witness, I will not get married again as long as my wife's still living. Because I've put her up on a pedestal, and I don't look at her with discouraging eyes. I don't look at her to pick her apart. I don't look at her to find something, because it doesn't take very long. You can find something wrong with your better half. It's real easy. But it takes a real long time for you to quit dragging up the past and dragging up issues. We could talk about family. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about dragging up the past. Today, before we get into next week, you need to draw a line in the sand before you walk out them doors and say, I'm not going to bring up something that is disappointing or I see as disappointment again. I'm going to look at the positive. I'm going to look at what they do right. I'm going to do what the War Room movie told us to do. When they do something wrong, I'm going to pray for them. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to go do whatever. I'm going to pray for them, and I'm going to get a couple other couples around me, and we're all going to pray together to see this thing through. You see, there's people that's been married to alcoholics and smokers and you name it. Could have had a porn problem. Who knows? But they were married for 20 years until God saved their soul. They went to church by themselves and took the kids to church, but they never said, well, I can't be married to you anymore. The Bible says don't be unequally yoked. Sure does. But when you make a vow to God, you better keep that vow. Prayer works. How many of you I've heard this a lot. Pastor, I'm just not feeling it with them anymore. It's just not there. We go home and we talk. It's not working. That's a cop-out. You got to make a choice. One choice is if you're not feeling it, you need to grow up. If you're not feeling your marriage, if it ain't working, if there's things that are going on and things in your life, you need to grow up. You need to make a choice to sow belief in your marriage right today. If you're sitting here and there's a problem with your relationship with your husband and wife, there's only one way to fix that. You start needing to think about all the good things. Remember when you started dating? You remember the first time that you kissed your wife or your husband? Do you remember that feeling when you could sit and talk on the phone for 4 hours and never talk about the same thing twice? And today you hate talking on the phone, and when your wife calls, you give her a one-word answer, and you just, I love you, babe. If anything changes, I'll tell you, but I don't like talking on the phone. Well, you sure did talk a lot when you was trying to get her to agree to marry you so that you could be legal in having relationships with your wife. And if you had relationships before the relationship, you was dead wrong. I've been there. I've done that. I'm talking to myself too. If you're going to start a relationship, start it on God. You have to be dedicated to your spouse. Let me ask you this. If I was to come into your house and sit down and say a lot of hurtful things about your spouse, would you get mad? You want to see my wife get fired up? You don't see it very often because we have to usually pray about it because some people don't like me. There may be somebody here who don't like me. But we have to pray about it because those mama bear claws, they grow quick. My dad and my brother, Chris, we couldn't live in Connersville because the first person that said they didn't agree with you or said something bad with you, hey, we'd be in jail. But when you get mad at your spouse, how many of you know exactly what to say to cut them plumb to the bone? I mean, there's things you can say. You don't even have to say maybe 3 words, and it's already, in the quick. Because you get mad at something they're doing or something they need to change. You got that disappointment that's all you're focused on, and I'm not going to show him love until he changes what he's doing. Does the Bible say that? Does the Bible say that you can make your husband live on the couch and he ain't even going to get near you until he mans up and starts living godly and working to support the family? Until then, you're on the couch, brother. Not what the Bible says. What's the Bible say? We're supposed to love, ain't we? You're the one that got married to him, not me. So you need to figure it out. It's easy to go get a divorce. It don't even take no time. You can even sit in your house and get up on the computer and hit print, and it'll just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Fill out 4 papers, and you're good to go. You know it's really hard? To start sowing positive into your life. To sow positive into your wife. Disappointment always leads to destruction. Disappointment always leads to destruction. When you got married, you remember all that stuff that she done and you done, and it was just, they don't do nothing wrong. I've found this perfect person. We're jiving good. Like to go eat the same places. It's going to be great. And a month after you're married and, that mood ring was on red, you're like, I'm done with that. She thought more of me when we wasn't married than she does now. That's why you need to, not have relations till you get married. Because if you do, that's what you're going to think about the rest of your life. Destruction. Disappointment always leads to destruction. Verse 8 says, one day Zechariah was serving God in the temple, for his order was on duty that week. Did you notice that Zechariah was serving God even when he wasn't getting what he was praying for? Did you know if we'll serve God, no matter what's going on in our relationship at home, in your marriage, if you'll serve God, he'll take care of the rest. He's going to turn that person around. Zechariah could have said, you didn't give me what I asked for. I'm not doing the temple thing anymore. I never got paid for it anyway, and I'm over that. You didn't give me a child. You know how hard it is, Lord, to serve you in the temple when I didn't even get a kid out of the deal. You sent me this old lady, and we're old together, and there ain't nothing happening now. But what he did was, my dedication to God is not based on what he can do for me. Your Christian walk, your salvation is not dependent on if God blesses you with money, a job, or whatever. You can't base your relationship on that. My dedication to God is based on who He is, not what He can do. Even when I don't get everything I need, even when my life is falling apart, even if you're married to somebody and you say, Lord, why didn't you show me this before? Pray about it. Did you know prayer can change your spouse, your mate? Do you know that God knows right where you are? He's right in the middle of your mess. Zechariah was not a fair weather rider. He didn't serve God just when the moods were going and when everything was perfect. He served God no matter what, even when his mess in life was she couldn't have a child. He could have said, I'm done with you, God. I don't need you. You don't worry about me. You don't love me. I could come up with all kinds of scenarios that people's told me. I served a real God, and He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't make me get married to somebody that is just a flippin' mess. There's people here today, when you get out of bed in the mornings, unless you're going to church, you probably go, dear Lord, why did I get married to him? You know, my wife used to say, your breath smells like stale beer. Well, sure it does. I like to drink it. She was glad when God took that away from me. I didn't see nothing stale about it. Now she's on coffee. I'm doomed. I'm not letting coffee go. Verse 9 and 10 says, as was the custom of the priest, he was chosen by lot to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and burn incense. While the incense was burning, a great crowd stood outside praying. Did you know Zechariah had people around him that prayed for him all the time? They didn't pay no money. They prayed all the time. There was people around him that was praying for him. He had a reason to give up. He had a reason to tell everybody he run to that God didn't serve him right. So if I was you, I'd walk real lightly and it's no count. But he didn't. I want the worship band to come up. If you're in a tough marriage, the best thing you can do is have out other couples to help you pray. Now, that's not a free time to just talk about whoever wants. That's not for you to call somebody that has a good marriage and go, can you believe what Tracy and Chris is going through? And they say, no. Why? You're like, well, I'm only supposed to pray for him, but can you believe he did that? It doesn't help. You got to have people praying for you. In marriage, you're not going to have wow days. You're going to have some wow days. But then again, you're going to have some days that are vow days. Guys, there's some vow days. There's some days that mood ring's not turning any color. There's going to be days that when you ask a question, you're going to get your head bit off. There's going to be other days that you can't do anything right. There's also going to be days that you can't see nothing but her faults too. Because there are days it would have been easier to fill up your motorcycle and ride till you almost run out and start over. How many of you are in that place today? You're like, Lord, I've tried this. We've been married for 20 years and now we've grown apart and we don't even like the same things. Did you know that Tracy and I could grow apart? We could get our focus on everything that she does wrong and she could get her focus on everything I do wrong, and it'd be a disappointment and it'd run us right to destruction. There's them days it'd be easier to start over. But can I tell you something? I'm standing here today a man that made made bad choices. But you know, when God allowed me to find a mate that loves me, a mate that cares for me, even when she does the disappointing things, even when she does stuff that are just like a blonde moment, that I still love her. I still see that lady that I spent all that time and money on dating, and because when we started dating, I had the excavating company. I mean, I had money to burn. Tracy's like, where do you get all this? I'm like, don't worry, sweetheart, I got you. We lived high. But she's always been here when we started the church, and I was too sick to work, and there was 35 people in the basement, and there wasn't enough money to even keep the lights on, much less make some money. She's been with me through this whole church deal when sometimes there's days that she takes my phone and she says, it's my time right now. If they got a problem, they can get a hold of Bubba, Noah, or Nolan, whoever. But today's my day. Because she knows when she's got to her breaking point, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to go fill our car up, and Hunter and I are going to get in the car, and we're going to drive and start all over again. She stops and she says, listen, this is what I see going on this week, and this is what you've done. Can we please just have a little time? She could get disappointed. She could see that our lives have changed in the last 6 years. But she chooses not to look at the disappointing. She looks at the positive. Somebody here today needs to turn around and look at your wife or your husband, or get at home and look at both of them and go, you know what? I've been focused on disappointment and destruction, and the devil's come into my mind and said, you can afford a house and you can afford an apartment. Why don't you just go do that and let them go? You don't need that. The grass ain't green on the other side. The person that you're dating now, if you've been divorced before, will turn out that you'll have that choice to make that decision again in that relationship, and it's up to you to make the right choice. Because marrying somebody else, if you act the same way you've always done, you're always going to get what you did, and that's going to be number 2, and then number 2 is going to turn into 3, and then you're going to be like a friend I've got, and it be number 8. Now, to me, if somebody's been married 8 times, either you married some wrong people that were just horrible, or you're making bad choices in your life as we speak. And one of them is that I use all the time. If you've got a marriage problem or you've got a problem in a relationship, if you don't have Jesus in the middle of it, you're doomed anyways. It was fun to go to those parties. It was fun to go drink as much as I wanted to. Tracy and I went to parties, and sometimes they would start playing poker, and paraphernalia was coming off. And I'm like, are you all right? Yeah, I'm okay. And when it gets down to about 2 more closes, I'm out. I'm ready to go. And she's like, yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here. There's times in our life where the devil thinks we're on the road and we're having fun because our wife is right there and she's not griping and complaining, so she must be enjoying it. And then one day you get up and she goes, I'm tired of being married to a drunk. Wait a minute. Yesterday we were fine, and today you're saying that I'm doing something that you can't handle anymore? That's what the devil does. He keeps on. It's kind of like the story I've told many, many times. They took a knife, a big Bowie knife, and they froze it till it's about that thick with ice on it. And they stuck it in the ground, and this wolf come around. And he started licking that ice because it had a taste in it. Maybe it had salt in it, a little bit of animal blood in it. And it kept on licking that knife. And when the knife got licked down to the sharp edge, the wolf still continued to lick that knife because he tasted the blood, and he loved that. And that's what drives him. And before you know it, the wolf, his tongue is cut in 2. The devil can make it feel like it's great. He can tell you that, man, if you'll just do this, join this, and be involved in this, life will be great. And your mate will follow along. And one day you're going to wake up and you're going to look at each other laying in bed. And it ain't going to matter whether you got a mood ring or not. You're done. Done. They can say anything they want to say. They can promise anything they want to say. But it won't fix it. Because you've been doing the same thing. You've been trying to get that licked off that knife, and now you're licking your own blood and you can't even see it. Your life is going down the toilets in your relationship, in your marriage. Maybe you're in a marriage where you got a relationship and you haven't went and got married. Let me encourage you. If you don't put God in the middle of it while you're dating, it may be too late by the time you get married and you still haven't put God in it. And this morning I'm begging you, and we'll talk about some more stuff next week, but Elizabeth had the choice to say, I'm not serving you anymore, God, because I asked for a baby and you didn't give it to me. And now I'm old, and now I can't have one. There's some of you here today that's stuck in a relationship. Things are going bad. And you got your eyes off of Jesus and you're focused on everything your mate is doing wrong. Maybe you're in that vow day. The only thing holding you on is because you signed your name and you're not a quitter. And you're ready to fill that car up and go as far away and start over. Maybe you hadn't had any of those wow days. You hadn't enjoyed being married to your best friend. Jesus is the same way. He'll be your best friend, but it's up to you to call his name. If you sow destruction in your marriage, that's all you're going to reap.